And for more on the rash of violence in the city, we're joined live right now by former Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders. So, Mark, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. So let's talk about this. 3 separate homicides, different parts of the city within 24 hours. What's your reaction?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, this is not unusual, but it is very unfortunate. You know, I remember working as a homicide investigator in the 90s, and there were times where you did have 3 homicides at the same time. It's challenging for the homicide squad, but I can tell you from an organization as a whole, with business continuity, all the resources are in place, especially for a homicide case. You'll get 100% of the necessary resources.
Okay, so putting this into perspective, also, let's talk about some solutions here overall when it comes to crime, because, you know, we do know that basically the ask of TPS in terms of the city budget, that was granted. So let's put that money to use.
Yeah. So here you go, classic example. During the budget period, the ask was for more resources, more officers. So the multi-year hiring is something that's essential. We're still not into the summer yet. I mean, there was frost 24 hours ago. So as it gets warmer, a lot of times we start to see trends where there's an increase of certain activity, especially when it deals with firearm offenses. So having the necessary resources to answer these calls and to answer the priority 1 calls that are going across the city 24 hours a day, it's essential.
And then along those lines, let's kind of, you know, put that money to use. How have you seen this being allocated over the years, and, you know, what changes do you see need to be enacted in the future in order to make Toronto more livable?
Yeah. Well, you know, first off, Chief Demkew and his executive command have a real firm understanding of what the necessities are for today's environment. And we have, the City of Toronto, it changes dynamically on a frequent basis. So dealing with some of the things, first off, cooperation and collaboration, working with other agencies. It's not about arresting. You're not going to arrest your way through these things. You have to have the strong partnerships to help with the preventative components to things. Then at the other end of it, you've got that bail. And that has been something that has been discussed. Whenever communities are feared of, you know, violent offenders, repeat violent offenders, which we have seen, there needs to be solutions on that back end as well. And when you put all of them together, you have better results.
And also, you know, speaking of results and looking at, you know, the police and the community all together, we do have to, you know, also talk about the reviews that have been ordered in terms of everything that's happened as a result of the Zamir case. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, the key and one of the most important components is the relationship with law enforcement and the communities that they serve. So when Chief Demkew basically ordered, here's what I'm going to do, arm's length, let others investigate, the sole purpose is to try to do everything you can to bring back that public trust. We need the public in order to solve crimes. That working relationship, if that is broken, then everything is broken. So making sure it's addressed as quickly as possible and making sure there's a lot of transparency, and then moving forward to make sure that everything can be done to keep your community safe is key.
And speaking of transparency, what recommendations would you say throughout this process would you give, you know, in order to maintain and, you know, build upon that public trust with Toronto Police?
Yeah, it never changes. It's not about your words. It's legitimacy is about what you say and what you'll do, and being continuous with those actions on a go forward, and that enhances public trust. People want to make sure that they feel safe, and they need to make sure that you know, they can have that cooperative conversation, and to make sure that the police serve the community and do it to the best of their ability, and making sure everyone's treated with the right respect and dignity.
And when it comes to that, let's talk about, you know, the work in the community with the Toronto Police Department, and then also the correlation with Crime Stoppers, because, you know, again, bringing this back to the top of the conversation, 3 different homicides within 24 hours in the city. Talk about the responsibility of the community as well.
Well, I won't say responsibility. First off, you know, Crime Stop is a fantastic tool. When you look over the years at the amount of arrests that have been made, that have been brought people to courts and successful conclusions where they've served their time, key and critical. But everything is going to be focal on community relationships. The community solves most of the crimes in the city. They always have. And I will tell you that there aren't a massive list of cases that are solved by Crime Stoppers. It has been the general public and the officers that go out there and do those investigations, and the cooperation of the communities. Listen, mothers want their communities safe. You want your kids to go out and be in parks and play and not worry about gun activity or things along those lines. So that cooperative relationship is what's key and fundamental to keeping communities safe.
And also, when it comes to keeping communities safe, we do still have the ongoing issue of auto thefts. What are you seeing right now in terms of what has been done And where do you think that the city and the police could use improvements in order to make the city safer, to protect people's cars and homes, because people are breaking in order to get keys?
I know. So a couple of things. First, I think the police have done a good job, but leaving it just to them is not going to get the right solutions. There has to be a collaborative approach. You have to work with all levels of government. I like to see that the GTA law enforcement have worked together, because organized crime at the end of the day is responsible for this. So that approach is key and necessary. And then as well, we have to look at whether or not there is some sort of legislative things that can be put in place. And I know they've gone to summits at Ottawa and had those conversations, but now it's time to switch all of this to action.
Okay. Mark Saunders, former Toronto Police Chief. Hey, I appreciate you and your time.
Good seeing you.
Thank you very much.